Hello, I'm Jonathan from Boom Instructor Training, and on this video I'll be analysing feedback from an examiner from an actual Part 3 test. And the reason that I'm doing this is so you can learn from someone else's mistakes. And therefore you can try your best to avoid these mistakes when you take your Part 3 test or standards check. At the end of your Part 3 test or standards check, the examiner will offer you some verbal feedback, and also you will receive an email with your Part 3 test result, and at the bottom of the email will be feedback from the examiner. And this feedback, in the event of failing a test, is to help either the PDI or ADI understand where they went wrong, so they can then try to improve their competence moving forwards in preparation for their next attempt. If you enjoy this video, please give it a like, or even better, let me know in the comments, because this video can either be just a one-off standalone video where I just analyse the examiner feedback on one occasion, or I can turn this into a series of videos and I can make more videos like this. So if you'd like to see me analysing examiner feedback in future videos, then let me know in the comments, and then I will make more videos just like this one. Let's now have a look at feedback from the examiner, and this was from an actual Part 3 test. So lesson and lesson theme. So the student was a partly trained student, and the theme of the lesson was junctions. Feedback from the examiner. Candidate allowed pupil to emerge into multiple vehicles at multiple roundabouts with little reflection or support, resulting in an automatic fail. Route was unsuitable with very busy junctions and dual carriageways. Lesson needed adaptation to reduce hesitation and correct approach speed towards junctions. So this was a total disaster in terms of a Part 3 test. Let's dissect what the examiner said sentence by sentence. So I may reword some of this to make it a little easier to understand. So basically the PDI allowed their pupil to drive up to the junctions of quite busy roundabouts and continue when it wasn't safe to do so. So there was vehicles approaching from the right. The pupil should have brought the car to a stop to give way to traffic from their right, but the pupil didn't do that. The pupil continued when it wasn't safe to do so, and the PDI allowed this to happen on multiple occasions, and that's why they failed on risk management. It was an automatic fail on risk management. And if we think about the risk management competences, was the trainer aware of their surroundings and pupils' actions? It doesn't appear so on this occasion. Okay, did the trainer verbally or physically intervene when it was appropriate to do so? No, not on this occasion, not at all. So that's why this was a failure of risk management. And then it also says that the PDI offered little reflection or support, which resulted in the automatic fail. So little support would mean as their pupil was driving towards the junction of the roundabout, the PDI was giving that pupil no help, no guidance, no instruction, whatever was necessary, whether that was direct instruction, telling the pupil what to do, although I would say it would have been better to ask well-timed questions to guide the pupil through the roundabout, to encourage them to think for themselves. So clearly the instructor did need to provide some level of assistance to their pupil, because clearly the pupil was out of their depth, but I don't know why, but the PDI just didn't help. And the examiner also says there was little reflection. So when mistakes did happen, which these mistakes were the fault of the PDI, not the fault of the pupil, but when mistakes did happen, the PDI just didn't discuss these mistakes with the pupil, didn't discuss what happened, why it happened, didn't discuss the risks, and didn't discuss what the pupil should do differently next time to make sure they deal with the roundabout safely and responsibly. So there was no learning was taking place. It sounds like it was just complete chaos. The examiner also says that the route was unsuitable, or we could say that the practice areas were unsuitable, or we could just say that the roads used during the lesson were unsuitable, okay? So the practice areas were unsuitable because it says here they were very busy junctions and very busy dual carriageways. So that suggests that the roads used, or the practice areas, were not suitable for the pupil's experience and ability. In other words, the pupil was completely out of their depth. The pupil felt overwhelmed because the practice areas were not suitable for that pupil. And this explains why so many mistakes were happening, because not only did the PDI offer very little help or support or guidance to this pupil, but to make matters even worse, the practice areas were far too challenging for the pupil's level of experience and ability. So the examiner said that the lesson needed adapting to reduce hesitation and the correct approach speed towards junctions. So reading between the lines here, I think what was happening is the pupil was approaching the junctions of the roundabouts far too fast. Therefore, the pupil wasn't giving themselves time to look at the flow of traffic on the roundabout, assess what's happening, and therefore the pupil didn't have time to interpret what was happening and make a safe and sensible decision. So sometimes what was happening is the pupil would rush up to the junction of the roundabout because they was approaching too fast, and then sometimes I was trying to go when it wasn't safe to go. And sometimes, because it says here to reduce hesitation, sometimes the pupil would have been stopping when in fact they could have gone. And that was just a complete lack of awareness and planning. Why was this happening? It was happening because the pupil was leaving their braking too late. I would suggest, in my experience, that the pupil just needed to brake earlier, approach at a more appropriate speed, and therefore they have more time to look, assess what's happening, and then make a sensible decision. And that decision could be to continue, or that decision could be to stop. And this is where the PDI went wrong, because the PDI just didn't address this issue. The PDI should have used some proactive questions and been guiding the pupil through these roundabouts by asking well-timed, proactive questions and guiding the pupil through the process. But clearly a discussion also needed to happen. The PDI needed to pull up the pupil at the side of the road at a safe place and have a discussion about what's happening. You know, discuss with the pupil that, you know, you're approaching these junctions too fast. You're not having time, you're not giving yourself time to look and assess the traffic, and therefore you're making these mistakes, and discuss the risks with the pupil. And it's better to, rather than telling the pupil directly, it's far better to ask the pupil questions, encourage the pupil to think for themselves and solve their own problems. But none of this happened on the Part 3 test. So yeah, the PDI just allowed the pupil to just keep going, messing up at one roundabout, mess up at the next roundabout, mess up at the next roundabout, did nothing about it. It was a total disaster, okay? So, what can you learn from the mistakes of this PDI? Okay, well, make sure that the practice areas are suitable for the pupil's experience and ability. Yes, you want to challenge your pupil, because by overcoming challenges, that's when learning takes place. But you certainly don't want your pupil to be out of their depth and overwhelmed. Otherwise, they'll be constantly floundering and getting into difficulty. You also, I don't think that by the sounds of it, this PDI properly identified the goals and needs of the of the pupil, because clearly the goal of the lesson should have been approach speed to junctions, and the need because the approach speed is too fast. Yeah, so the solution to this is to start to brake earlier, brake more progressively, and approach at a more appropriate speed. Therefore, you have more time to look, assess, and decide what to do. So that should have been the goal of the lesson. And that's what the lesson should have focused on, and then the pupil should have proactively guided the pupil through the roundabouts. So this is really what you need to learn. Make sure that you identify the very specific learning goal and need for the pupil. Make sure the practice areas are suitable. Make sure that you give the appropriate level of support that pupil needs. Make sure you discuss driving problems with the pupil so they understand what to do, and try to encourage the pupil, then pass responsibility to the pupil as the lesson progresses, and encourage them to try more for themselves so we can see an improvement taking place, because learning must take place on a Part 3 test or standards check. Okay, I think that's all I've got to say about this Part 3 test. The examiner didn't say too much in the feedback, but we could pick out what happened and actually have a good discussion on this video based on what the examiner said. Let me know in the comments if you found this video helpful. It's the first video that I've done where I'm giving analysing feedback from the examiner. Let me know if you'd like to see more videos just like this. Like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I'll see you on the next video.